Climate change is the problem of our times. Everywhere we look, we see natural disasters, from forest fires to floods. The insurance and real estate sector is especially affected by those disasters. Last year, assets in the value of $3.6 trillion have been destroyed as a result of natural disasters. Insurances now have to ask themselves which properties to insure and which not to insure. HTA will solve this problem. We combine data from Earth observation, sensor data, and big data analysis to help insurances better assess the risk and protect their property. To build the best risk assessment in the world, we need an initial investment of $350,000. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. We are going to present to you our HTA project about Earth observation for the insurance and asset sector by applying the VCW framework to identify the best location for a startup. This is our team, Carolina, Frederic, Marina, Moritz, and myself, Justine. I'm going to start with phase 1, discovering value. Natural disasters are becoming more and more frequent and have an important impact on today's society and economy. One of the main issues being global warming, increasing natural disaster from 39 disasters in 2016 to 396 disasters in 2019. The social impact can be measured by 91.9 million people being affected from natural disaster in 2019 and an economical loss of $3.6 trillion in 2021 due to natural disasters. Natural disasters have also an important impact on the insurance and asset sector, as risk assessment is becoming more and more difficult due to unexpected events. Therefore, we make HTA's mission to help insurance company to accurately assess the risk of different property types. Our vision is to provide our clients with the most precise technology to prevent disaster and/or act fast in a past situation while satisfying the needs of the insurance companies. Therefore, our values are safety, innovation and technology, commitment, and precision. HTA's technology is retrieved from satellite footage that help us identify natural disaster based on historical data. We are able to deliver asset-specific risk assessment reports to insurance companies and help insurance companies to make informed decisions and advise customers to assure people's future and contribute to pre-disaster management for safer communities. Our potential target market are government, ministries, municipalities, and help their population regarding natural disaster, impact reduction, and insurance company helping them through risk assessment of different property types. HTA positions itself as a downstream service using the data from a data distributor to offer holistic risk assessment and emergency disaster management services to our clients, the end user, such as governments or insurance companies. We enable value creation for insurance companies by minimizing their costs and helping them decide which properties to insure and which not, and at which insurance rate. HTA is also aligned with the SDGs and the European Green Deal and Paris Agreement. Indeed, HTA's strategic objectives are allocated to the 3 Ps: profit, people, and planet. In terms of profit, we want to create net profit at the end of the year 3. In terms of people, we want to create jobs and grow the HTA team and contribute to the safety of people. And in terms of planet, we want to support the UN, the EU, and the NGOs by providing EOS data to monitor changes. To have a better understanding about the industry, we first created a task matrix to create strategies considering our strengths and weakness while identifying the opportunity and threat in the industry. While we can see that the service lacks awareness among all communities and we are facing strong competition on the market, The positive effect of the efficient damage estimation and a highly customizable service can stand out and raise awareness among society. However, we should continue to look for groundbreaking technologies or the newest technologies to gain competitive advantage and propose the highest value for our clients. We then proceed to conduct a Porter's Five Forces analysis to understand the level of ease of entering the market and where we will still face challenges. The supplier power can be identified as high as the market has limited number of suppliers that gives them more bargaining power. Equally, buyer power would be high as the reliability and quality of the data is extremely important for the insurance companies as they will adapt their rate calculation model to our algorithm. The threat of new entries would be medium. HTA is still facing structural barriers to entry, such as hard profit margins to attain in this industry, as we need to create economies of scale. Further, strategic barriers to entry exist as large capital and licensing agreement is needed for the data collection. However, HTA's technology is already working with the Italian Space Agency. The threat of substitutes would be qualified as medium. HTA is proposing a unique value proposition tailored to insurance companies' needs according to demand substitution criteria. However, public access to satellite data could make our product dispensable. We will further discuss competitive rivalry that could be qualified as medium to high. As we can see here, HTA is facing indirect competition to the Earth observation, such as drones, sensor data, and meteorological services. However, we believe that we can add value to our service by integrating this indirect competition. For example, unmanned aerial drones have potential to change the camera angle compared to satellite footage, which would give us more precise results. Therefore, by integrating substitutes of our technologies, we reduce the competitive risk of indirect competition and gain competitive advantage to our direct competition by offering a more complete product with a wider range of services. Finally, to our stakeholder involvement plan, our group will be the key decision maker, while other stakeholders will be involved through different phases. Most importantly, our shareholders or suppliers and/or potential customers will be involved to give us guidance on the feasibility of our project and to understand the needs and the gaps in the market. From the insights we can get from them, we can understand how our HTA can create the maximum value for the insurance industry.
Now we are moving to the second phase of the value creation wheel. The second phase aims to create value by generating solutions and filters that allow prioritizing solutions. To achieve the solution generation, HTA is considering the 193 member states of the United Nations. Moreover, the commitment of most member states to the SDGs goals is aligned with HTA's values and is favorable to raise funds. Regarding this step, the aim is to achieve as many filters as possible, and in order to understand if a solution might or not be suitable for future implementation, it became important to support this step with different approaches, as the brainwriting method and the usage of primary and secondary data. Also, a list of potential filters was required to narrow down on a precise location and target market. First, the 635 brainwriting method was used. During an online meeting with the team, a document was shared and filled out the template in a 5-minute time limit. Then, the generated ideas were read in round 1 before starting round 2, which allowed each team member to create high-quality pictures in a short period of time. Filter generation also emerged from primary and secondary research. Regarding primary data, emails were sent to the most important stakeholders, and stakeholder involvement is represented in the next 3 slides. As secondary data, online databases, competitors' websites, and online reports were used. In this slide, we included some examples of sent emails to different suppliers in order to get more precise and effective results. In this slide, we have another example of an email that was sent to a property selling agency, and also the email they sent us back with some helpful information for us to consider in our final target market.
So thanks, Carolina. In addition to the other stakeholders that we involve, we conducted one interview with a business development junior associate of Panattoni Europe, which is the European market leader for industrial property project development. And he is a junior associate who runs multiple discounted free cash flows analyses, also including risk factors. So he helped us to understand which factors are crucial for insurance companies to understand in return in order to assess the risk of a property. And we especially hired him or asked him for feedback on the prototype that we developed.
Mr. Herman, thank you for
After
your
the interview,
initial
we
answer
also
on the
sent
first
him
question.
the prototype
My second question would
screenshot,
be, what do you
and then
think are the
he
most critical
sent us
factors
an
in
email
assess environmental
with
risks
his
of an already
thoughts.
constructed
But
industrial
let's hear into an excerpt from the interview, which was conducted in German,
the environmental
which
factors.
we
You have
then
to investigate
also
them
agreed on
and
that we
put it in
would
your
ask him
DCF
again,
calculation.
like one of the questions in English to present it to you in this video.
Important is for
So
us
I'll be
is
quiet
like
and let's listen to
fire is
Mr. Herman.
a really bad factor in that case, or the elementary, also thunder or heavy rain. The winter is pretty hard. That's some points you have to investigate if you want to build if you want to buy an building.
Okay, thank you.
And after listening to this short excerpt, I would like to give it back, hand it over to Carolina.
Finally, we proceed to the categorization and creation of an overview of the 64 potential filters, which were supported with a PESTEL analysis. The third phase of the value creation wheel aims to select the most appropriate filters and criteria to achieve a fitting market location. In this phase, the key decision makers identify the potential of each solution and filter coming from the previous phase, and also throughout this phase, both collaborative and rational decision making were used in order to get the most effective and precise results. The poker method was applied in phase 3B, and the utility of this method passes by narrowing down and reducing the number of filters and solutions, leading to a better understanding of how each filter can bring added value for the team analysis and how can it be useful for the choice of the right country and region to implement our services. As already mentioned, we brainstormed together and applied the poker method to select the most appropriate filters, and with further research we started to kill the filters for which the availability of information was limited, as this would be ineffective. In the end of this process, there were considered 9 global filters. To validate value, the filters were ranked according to their relevance to the implementation of the project, with a strong reasoning supporting it. HTA categorized the filters into priority and nice-to-have ones. The nice-to-have filters are the ones that would only come into play if there were several target geographies left after applying the priority filters. Finally, we also consider important to distinguish the global filters from the local ones in order to attain a more precise solution.
Thank you, Carolina. Now let's continue with phase 4, capture value. The first fraction of phase 4 consists of the value creation funnel. So let's jump right into it. So let me guide you through the process we went through in order to get from the 193 United Nations member states until reaching a target country and then finally a target state or province. So first of all, we did the filters as Carolina mentioned before, and then we concluded some of them into priority filters and others into nice-to-have filters, which would only be required if multiple countries passed the priority filters, which was not the case in our project. So after reaching South Korea, which was found our target country, we would then run a local funnel, which I will explain to you later. After reaching South Korea as the final target country, we would then run a local funnel based on 7 additional filters, which would then guide us to a final target region in a local perspective. So the first filter we did apply was the industrial buildings per province, which highly affects the market size of that target region. The second one was the GDP per capita, because usually people who earn more money also have more expensive properties and housing, and this also affects the revenue potential for us, because also insurance companies will in turn charge a higher rate. Nevertheless, it's not only about the GDP, but to be more specific, it's the mean purchase price per housing unit that actually would affect or increase our revenues. That's why we chose this one as the third most important filter. Then we had other demographic aspects like the population size or also the number of workers in each of the provinces in South Korea. So let me guide through the global value creation funnel. How did we end up in South Korea? So as we mentioned, we start with all 193 UN member states. And then the first and most immediate thought we had was to assess the risk of natural disasters of all of these countries. And then we set the bar at 2.5%, which already filtered out roughly 55 countries. From those 139, only 75 made it to the next stage, which was based on filtering the GDP per capita for a value of more than $5,000 per year. In addition, we had filters that were directed through the technological infrastructure level of the country, as it's easier to do business in general, but also to run a corporation or a startup that is in the software industry. So we provide high-tech products. Therefore, our clients and the whole country should have at least a certain level of technological infrastructure. This infrastructure level filter did not really add value, because we still had 9 countries after applying it, because all of the countries that were left, which were very developed countries such as Germany, Singapore, South Korea, the US, UK, and so on, they made it through. So in the next step, we applied a global innovation index, which shows the likelihood of a country, firms, or economy to innovate, to produce innovative products, and also setting the basis to enable innovation through government subsidiaries and so on. Of course, also the insurance penetration rate was one thing we really considered as very important, because if there is expensive property, it's worth nothing if the house owner does not reach out to insurance company who would then insure the property. So we would only have a revenue potential if the house owner would actually have the asset insured. As we did not want to have structural barriers to entry, a lot of bureaucracy and so on, we decided to include the ease of doing business for this, which is especially important when you're in a startup, because you have to be dynamic, and bureaucracy should not limit your speed and your evolving your growth in the end. Not lastly, but a very important consideration was also the Sdg Index, as the Sdg Index tells to which degree or to which extent member states of the United Nations commit themselves to the SDG goals and actually achieve them, at least partially. So after this one was applied, we could filter out UK and the United Arabian Emirates, and therefore we were only left with Korea, Singapore, Germany, and the US. Also, the tax rate is very important, as one of the 3 Ps is profit, and to be more profitable we would require a lower tax rate, and therefore it was more attractive to be based or targeting Korea first or Singapore compared to the US or Germany that have 40% in income tax for firms, and Korea and Singapore are below 30%. Then a minor important filter compared to all the other ones I mentioned previously was the Climate Risk Index. The Climate Risk Index is an index that looks at how much the climate change is sensible in a certain region. And we included this one because the way the climate change influences natural disasters, which we already majorly captured with the risk of natural disasters, is also involved in the climate risk index. So the more the climate is subject to changes, the more volatile the climate is, the higher the risk of natural disasters. So that's why we re-emphasize this one. And after this one, who did again not contribute to an elimination of another country, we would then have our final filter, which was the government expenses on infrastructure as a whole. So the more government spend on infrastructure, usually the more subsidized they are, and the better is the construction, the more valuable is the property, and the higher needs to be the insurance rate charged by insurance companies. And then finally we reach South Korea, or Korea Republic. So now let's look deeper into South Korea. South Korea is located in Asia. It's close to Japan, and of course, as it's said in the name of it, it's the southern part of what was in former times Korea. Above there's North Korea, and the more southern part is the Korea Republic, or South Korea. South Korea is composed of multiple smaller provinces. So those districts are called provinces in Korea, and Korea has a population of over 50 million with a square area of 100,360 kilometers. The GDP is with 33K per capita per year, pretty decent. So Korea obviously passed our GDP per capita filter, and this makes it an attractive region to enter. And now let's look deeper into what potential target buyers would there be in South Korea. So first of all, we identified the provinces themselves and their administrative departments or ministries. So all of them could be interested in receiving consultancy services for the construction of assets, but also for the monitoring of the risk state of certain assets, which could be not only public buildings or bridges, but also, for example, the government buildings like a palace or another building that is crucial in terms of military actions or national defense. Moreover, there are several ministries in Korea that promote country development, of which, for example, safety would be something feasible to look out for, or also food and rural areas. But as our topic that was given to us was the assets in the insurance sector in specific, we decided to focus on the Korean property insurance companies. And the biggest of them being Allianz, a German insurance company, the Korean ER, which is huge and operating in whole Asia, but also AXA or Lotte, which have high market shares in the Korean market, and all have a property insurance division. So as we identified that there are different types of target customers, we would later need to decide which one we would target in specific. So as I already mentioned previously, and I'm not going to repeat it, we had some filters which led us to G-on-G. And as I already mentioned, we also included Seoul. So now let's look into the map again, and then I will give you more rationales of why we did that decision. So the local target market we chose was G-on-G and Seoul. So G-on-G was the one given by the local value creation funnel, and Seoul is geographically right within G-on-G, even though it's an autonomous state So it serves as a city, as the capital, but also as a province. And from a business perspective, of course, it just makes sense. If you're capturing basically everything around something, you also target the thing or the city in that case, which is surrounded by the other areas. Also, Seoul as the capital has a very, very high market potential, additionally to what Gyeonggi offers. So Seoul, being the capital, is the center of financial services. So there are a lot of skyscrapers, as we know them, for example, from Manhattan or London or any other financial capital. And this creates value to us. Also, in the more rural areas of Seoul, there's a lot of industry. So there are a lot of industrial buildings that are very big compared to the ones that are surrounding in Gyeonggi-do, which is mainly the heavy industry. The ones that are in Seoul are very, very large companies that can actually also afford to be located in Seoul, which is of course more expensive as compared to the rural areas. And also what is very convincing is that in Seoul, the prices, like the living costs, the living expenses are higher, which is also reflected in the higher GDP per capita, which is pretty high for both of the regions or provinces compared to other ones. So this table you can see on the right hand side of the slide basically shows all the local filters we went through and contrasts the values of the Seoul and Gyeonggi-do. So what needs to be mentioned, just to synthesize what is written on the slide, like the numbers are not too important, is that Gyeonggi-do is, of course, bigger, larger, more population, higher, but not necessarily higher prices, because Seoul is like the center of Korea, as I mentioned, and everything is more expensive there, which leads to a higher value creation potential for us serving insurance companies in that area. So from a business perspective, it was really a good decision in HTA's view, and therefore we targeted both regions. On the previously presented slide, we had the raw data in terms of numbers, but now let's put those numbers into perspective. So on the table on the right, you can see basically again all of our filters and the information that was gathered for those filters for all the provinces in South Korea. And what we can see is in the first row there's Seoul, and in the third row there's Gyeonggi-do, which was like the result that the local VCW gave us. And Seoul, it was the one that we added artificially. But as the value creation wheel is a dynamic and a meta framework that can be applied and which is flexible, it allows for adjustments when they make sense. We decided to still do Seoul and Gyeonggi-do. And this is also supported by the conditionally formatted table. As you can see, that the Seoul region and the Gyeonggi-do region both have rather blue, light green and light yellow fields or cells, which basically signals that they have a relatively high value compared to the other districts or provinces for each individual filter. And now let's jump into phase 4B. Phase 4B is the one that we developed a prototype, and what we did first was looking into competitors. So our competition analysis was directed through 4 different players that operated or operate in different geographies: A, Cape Analytics, B, ProGeo, C, Athenium Analytics, and D, Hancom, which was the only Korean firm that was actually being a competitor at the moment we did the research. So the market was already served in South Korea at the point that we looked into competitors, but the good thing is that there is yet only one player, and it is not as competitive as in other regions. For example, Cape Analytics, ProGeo, and Ethereum Analytics, they actually serve more geographical markets than just one. They are being present in the US, but also in Europe. So what we can see on the left is the table with the firms I just described briefly, and we can see whether they distribute also data related to Earth observation services in the first row, drones, sensor data, and meteorological data. And as we can see, there is no player that serves all those dimensions. So there is no player that offers each of those different data types or forms, but HTA. And we are HTA, so that's good news for us. We can differentiate even from Hancom, that has a very, very sensible and very profound Earth observation service. So they are definitely a very, very competitive opponent in terms of rivalry. And also they're offering drone services, which would not be something differentiating for us. When looking into a blue ocean strategy, we cannot really gain ground in terms of those two types of data forms. However, what we can do to differentiate is offering sensor data. For example, sensors sensing earthquakes. So looking at how are fluctuations in the earth and on the ground, and those would also be measuring the volatility of a certain area and how much exposure is there for risky earthshakes and earthquakes in the end. Furthermore, we also attempt to receive meteorological data, which we would synthesize with the data we receive from those upstream firms that give us the pre-structured data. You saw it earlier. And we would combine these data flows and make sense of them for our customers, which will be in the assets and insurance sector. And as the spider diagram shows, at least, I know it's all fives and you may think it's not realistic, but like for us, it's very easy to match just the best competitor in terms of drones, which is going to buy the same drone. We can actually negotiate with the same data suppliers as they do. So we really think we can like step up to the plate and match them in terms of quality. And then what we want to do is additionally offer the sensor data and the meteorological data in order to have a better mechanism to assess the risk of different areas and properties in specific. Here you can just see another way of visualizing it. It's basically saying, or like the message is the same. So we want to try to do everything. We want to be a complete player, which is especially important when we are not talking only anymore about the South Korean market, but at a later point in time, we may seek to expand to have a growth in terms of the size of the company, the revenues, and then at some point also the profits. So to make it short again, we really want to differentiate ourselves from other competitors, especially Hancom, which is already present in the market in South Korea. So now let's look into a marketing concept, which is the segmentation, targeting, positioning process. So first of all, we segmented the market. We showed you earlier that we basically identified 3 different types of customer groups. And when segmenting, we identified that there are insurance companies and there are basically governments, because like districts and so on, they are basically a sub-branch of the government. And we said that we can actually create more value to insurance companies. So we would prioritize insurance companies, which does not necessarily mean that we would neglect governments, because as we are a data provider, like our marginal cost of serving an additional customer or customer group are rather low compared to a producing company in terms of products, physical products, tangible products. In terms of targeting, therefore, we said that we want to target the insurance companies because they have a higher market potential, a better fit to our resources and capabilities. And then in our positioning, we said that we want to differentiate from all of the other competitors, and we want to have a 24/7 availability of customer service, which will have also implications for the hiring, which we will see in phase 5 in the manpower part that Fred will explain. The fact that we prioritize insurance companies in our targeting does not mean that we're not serving governments, because we serve governments in an indirect way. Of course, there's manufacturing sites that are mostly privately owned by firms. There's private housing, which, as the name signals, is also a private type of property. There's also public infrastructure, and that public infrastructure is from the government. Like basically the government owns those type of properties. And if we, for example, look into a bridge will also be insured. And the government is the insurance taker, and the insurance company receives some kind of insurance rate as for all the other properties. And in return, the government knows that if there are damages due to different occurrences, the insurance company will have the government covered. So in case of damage, they are insured. So we are indirectly also serving governments, as this does not only hold true for bridges, but all kind of public property like parks, schools, universities, airports, military facilities. So we serve both in the end, but we do this via targeting insurance companies. In the next step, I'd like to guide you through the 7 Ps. The first of them being the product. So as we are a software provider, we will be distributing data. We're actually a service company, and the product in essence is a service. We will be offering 3 different types of services. The first one being a property selection support for insurance companies based on a holistic risk assessment. And this will be a tool that will help the insurance company to make an informed decision of whether to insure or not a property. And as Earth observation is something not to look into each square centimeter, but rather like at larger areas, we decided to offer it on a block basis, so on a predefined square meter or square kilometer R area, and this will be a one-time fee in return for receiving the information of the current state of the risk for this specific area. Our second service is basically the same, but it's continuously. So if there are changes, let's say tomorrow, to the insured area we talked about for service 1, we would then notify our client, so the insurance company, that the risk has changed, which could be, for example, due to bad weather approaching, which we could sense through the meteorological data, or rising sea levels, or a natural disaster approaching like a tsunami and so on. And the base of this is a auto renewal type of service, meaning that if the customer does not cancel the contract, it will be continuing. So it's like an opt-out mechanism that will support us in generating long revenues, also from a long-term perspective. Last but not least, we will be also offering consultancy services, which is not the core business of ours, but we will do it. For example, if governments ask us to come up with a contingency plan, we can synthesize our technological know-how, the data we can gather with our management and project management skills, and we could help, therefore, the government at a much lower rate, which we will also discuss in the pricing in a second. But first, let's look into promotion, so the marketing part, in terms of advertising and also in terms of how we want to reach our customers. We will have offline channels as it's common in B2B sales, like conferences and exhibitions. But additionally, we will also be present in research papers. So we want to collaborate with schools, which will give us exposure, academic recognizability, and will enhance also our brand image. At the same time, we want to collaborate with NGOs. We will be basically offering them risk reports for free or data in case they want to analyze it themselves or have common projects together. But this can only be happening as soon as we reach our first sale, because at the moment we would not have the resources to basically work on a free basis. The online channels we are looking into are obviously a website, which is necessary also for the channel that we will discuss in a sec. We will be present on social media, but our focus will be on LinkedIn, as most of the key decision makers of firms, but also governments, are present in this network, and therefore we will concentrate our efforts there. Also, it's a very costly way of communicating to customers. It's basically free to set up a company page. At some point, we will look into search engine optimization, having some keywords placed by Google, but at the moment we do not have the funds yet to do so. And we would like to look into a CRM system, like, for example, Salesforce, in order to enable us to improve our advertising effectiveness and also our conversion rate. Now let's look into pricing. I already said that Service 1 is a one-time fee. So for this, it only depends on the kind of area. So we're following a value-based pricing strategy. Those customers, those insurance companies that want to have the risk assessment for a large area, they will pay more. Those who will only need it for a very small area, they will pay less. And this way we can discriminate our prices, which enables us to capture the high end of the market, like the big players, but also would be possible for small players to collaborate with us. For the monthly fee, of course, it's cheaper because we have those opt-out contracts, and there will be auto-renewal. And therefore, we believe that it's reasonable, it's feasible to charge a lower price, a much lower price, and this is almost 28 times less than the one-time fee for the same kind of area. And as I mentioned, for some governments, we might take also into account offering consultancy services. And basically, our rate per hour is rather cheap, because it already includes the services one, or basically the risk assessment. And this will also help us to lobby in the government sector, as we might need their support or subsidiaries in the future to expand, or also on regulatory issues. The complementing services we offer, being a drone, sensor data, and so on, we discussed like what differentiates us from other competitors, will also come at a cost, but it's benchmarked to industry values, and that's pretty feasible to do for us as well. Now let's continue with Place. Place is the way of how you will reach your final customer, and we will do it via a online store and via a sales representative that we will need to hire. This will be crucial, as B2B sales are dominated by direct selling, and it's very important to have a responsible salesperson for this, which we will need to hire. Additionally, we will also need customer support employee, a translator, and a corporate lawyer. The lawyer will help us in the very beginning to set up the company, to take care of the legal and regulatory actions that would be necessary to found a company and to establish the Korean office. Next, the physical evidence for us is mainly tangibles and intangibles like the app and the kind of dashboard we will provide related to the product. And we will look into a prototype later for this. The last thing I'd like to mention would be the process. So we agreed internally with the key decision makers of HTA that we want to follow a lean management approach, which serves to minimize the waste. Waste means inefficiency and thereby cost. And as we are a startup, we do not have the funds and we cannot afford to be inefficient. So we will follow strictly lean principles also in the way we design the customer journey. Which will be done over time as soon as we gain traction, actually make sales happen. The research and development will be done by the upstream participants, as we will just provide the data. That's something we really want to emphasize on. So there we can save costs, but in terms of process, the R&D and the way the accurateness of the data and so on and how it is analyzed is not up to our data analysts. We don't have them, but more to the more upstream players like ResTech. So one thing I want to make sure, again, it's to explain how our product works, because this is a crucial aspect. So do you remember that each firm tries to maximize their profit? This can be done by either minimizing costs or maximizing revenues. And if we look at how an insurance company can maximize its profit, we can support on the minimizing cost side. So we can do that by looking into those different property types and assessing the risk. And if there is a high risk, we will tell the insurance company, oh, that's risky to insure, so you might opt out, so not insure it because the risk is too high that there will be a damage. Or if the insurance companies say, yeah, we really want to insure that object, then we tell them what would be an appropriate rate for this in terms of like securing the risk by a high premium that they will need to charge. And that's the value added for those insurance companies. So it's mainly the cost side, but of course, if they try to take the risk, it's also having implications on the revenue side. And that's how we can serve our clients, the insurance companies, in the best way, since we do not only have the data as other competitors may have for the general risk based on Earth observation, but we also have the complementing services, as I explained to you some minutes ago. Let's also look into the deep dives of the other piece very quickly, because I already introduced the main things that are crucial to understand HTA's value proposition. But in terms of promotion, we will have a website, which you can see here in a large way. We will also have a LinkedIn account, which you can see a sample post of ours. And at some point, we will have search engine optimization. Of course, my video is like kind of not in the right position for you to see, but at some point it will look like this. And now let's look also into the other piece. So pricing, I already explained. The main message here is the value-based pricing strategy. The channels being mainly direct channels, but we will also look into trade shows to make contacts, to spread the word about HTA and its highly valuable and value-creating offerings. And the people, purposes, and roles in our enterprise I already explained. So maybe let's start looking into the physical evidence and prototype in more detail. So what you can see here is a screenshot of the dashboard that is actually our product. You can see that there is a map showing a real-life satellite live image, and it shows different risk layers being indicated by the different colors, red being risky, green being rather unrisky, so to speak, or less risky. And also you can see that there is a field that distinguishes between risk of floods, of bushfires, of lightning strikes, or heavy weather such as snow, storms, or heavy rain. And you can see a risk score for each of these factors that have a large impact or high implications for the general risk level of an object. And for this specific purpose, we will, as I mentioned, have the possibility for insurance companies to ask our company for data on a large area, as we can see it with the 3 different colors, or just for a small block of houses, or even one specific property. As I already touched upon earlier, we also think about the clients of our clients. So, of course, it's in the best interest of the insurance company that nothing ever happens to any kind of property. And there are some quick wins which we can also support, as we have meteorological data. We know when bad weather is, for example, approaching, and we remind our clients, so the private house owner or the facility manager of a firm, yeah, please close your windows. There's bad rain approaching. And therefore, we also have the app that can not only be used by our clients, by the insurance companies, but also is provided to house owners or property owners that have contracts with insurance companies. Last but not least, I'd like to show you it in more detail. So let me point out with the pointer what I'm talking about. So here we have the iPad version of our app. Here there will be the option to talk to a customer representative and have the FAQ section of how does this work, how do I need to do it. But for you, I will just quickly go through it. So the risk score I talked about is here, and it's on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being a highly risky object and 0 being a rather unrisky object. So a insurance company employee, or let's say manager, who needs to decide whether he or she wants to insure a specific object because there was a request by either a firm or a private person, he would then look, or she would then look into the score, and based on this score, he or she would decide to insure the object or not, based on a proposition that we give in terms of how high should be the insurance rate, which is information that the insurance rate gives us on an average for a specific area. So if we have Manhattan here, then there may be, I don't know, $50 the usual rate per square meter for a skyscraper, for example. And then there may be deviations if there's high risk, and we would recommend such a price rather than a low price. As already mentioned, there are different layers or factors that influence the risk of a property being highlighted here. And there is a live imagery, which you can see here from a Earth observation perspective, and at the same time you have the Google Maps kind of interface, which is more suitable for a insurance manager. Finally, the last P, the process. As I told you, it's highly dependent on when we will reach the first point of contact with a prospective client, but basically it will be a multiple step process. And a customer journey could look like this. So an insurance company searches for property risk assessment support or consulting services, then they would probably send a RFPs or a request for a proposal. We would answer it, we would provide an offer and send a demo of our app, and would then hopefully convince the client of buying. we would provide the login credentials to our service user and give him a quick intro on how to use everything. Then we would gather feedback to have a continuous improvement in our firm. And last but not least, we hopefully have a high retention rate and a minimized churn rate. And in a best case scenario, he or she will also spread the word, and there will be word of mouth effects for us. As a quick bonus, so how did we come up with the prototype? We used the Scamper method. I won't go into detail. I will just in a more visual way explain you again what we can offer. So that's the website you saw before with a area perspective and the notification tool. But more importantly, we have the desktop view here showing exactly how the insurance property manager can make a more informed decision by entering the type of address, looking into the factors that affect the risk, having a look at the final risk score, being able to reach out to customer support, having a benchmark for regular prices in the area, and being able to see the Google Maps perspective at the same time. So the last prototype we also have is the tablet version, so the iPad version, just signaling again that our system runs, or different systems are suitable for the type of app we have. We support not only Android but also iOS devices, and also serve Windows and Macs. Of course, there are also in-store purchases available in our not prototype but product. So in case there was a one-time risk assessment through the website, a insurance company employee could also opt in for the monthly subscription, so changing the mode, and he or she could also opt out. So after having this extensive look into our prototype in the marketing approach HTA follows, we will now move into phase 5, and Fred will guide you through how we consolidate value.
Thank you very much, Moritz, for handing over, and thank you for the presentation. We are now processing to phase 5, where we look on the final phase of the value creation wheel, and where we try to identify the value we would like to consolidate with our business. First, let's look on the business model canvas that we have finalized for our business. We will not go into detail because we will find the details on the next few slides. But what is important to witness on this slide is basically our key resources. That is our platform that has to be developed, and the relationship with the Earth observation satellite image companies, as well as our value proposition we have identified for the sector, that is helping insurance companies to make better informed decisions on which objects to insure and which not, and to better be able to calculate the risk exposure of those insurance companies. Also, the key partners will not be found on the next few slides. Let's look on this a little bit more detailed. So first we have the investing entities. This is really important because we need some capital for the startup phase. Those are basically venture capitalists and business angels. And secondly, we have the technology partners. Our technology partners are data providers, so Earth observation, data suppliers, and also institutes that help us enter the South Korean market, so South Korean research institutes and also government agencies. And last but not least, the funding organizations within the European Union will be very necessary for us, because there's a lot of funding available for startups like ours, and we have to have a strong relationship with them. Let's look on the time planning of our company, so the 3M model, and let's look on the minute first. Before starting, we have some ongoing work to do. So that is basically market analysis, researching potential investors and other things that can be done without any capital investments. But our official start of working will be Q3 in 2022. So there we want to finalize the first contracts with clients, start our marketing campaign, and launch our dashboard. In the next few quarters after that, so Q4, Q1 and Q2, we will have more feedback from the clients to improve the functionality of our dashboard, keep on going with the marketing research and sales efforts, and monitor the KPIs. And finally, in Q2 in 2023, we would like to assess the possibility of entering other markets where we can also expand to. Let's look on the second stage of 3M, so the money cost slide. Let's not go into detail here. We can basically see the cost structure we have in year 1 and year 5 on the left-hand slide. We can see that in both cases, IT and RD expenses take the majority of our costs. And on the right-hand side, we can see this in more detail. Basically, the majority of our costs at the beginning will be IT and research and development expenses, because we have to develop the dashboard and integrate other services. And once we progress in the next few quarters and years, we will spend more time on sales and marketing efforts, and also other headcount. To start up, we also developed this 3M slide. So this is basically how we want to finance ourselves in the first few months and quarters where we will not have revenue. We will start with pre-seedings, we look for pre-seed investors. Those are basically governmental agencies that allow young startups or entrepreneurs raise some capital or funding and start their first MVP. After we have finished that, we will go into the seed space, and we have here identified 3 major investors in the downstream market. So Primo Space, Fraunhofer Ventures, and Promos Ventures, which are investing into orbital ventures. This phase will be started once we have successfully finished pre-seeding and have developed the first MVP. And if we are proving our product and closing some clients, we will see the Series A, where we have identified some more venture capitalists. Let's look on the revenue side. On this slide, we can see the 4 different segments we are targeting. We see the single family buildings, the industrial buildings, commercial buildings, and multifamily buildings. And in the table in the middle, we can see the macro numbers for the South Korean market. Here in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do, which are our initial districts, we can see that there are roughly 1 million multifamily buildings together, approximately 800,000 single-family buildings, and approximately 350,000 commercial buildings and 110,000 industrial buildings. So this slide is very helpful to understand the revenue that is the revenue model we have developed. So let's look at one case in particular. So we have 2 different streams of revenue: transactional revenue and recurring revenue. The transactional revenue is based on the one-time assessment of the risk of their property. So all property that needs to be assessed whether they should insure or not. So before this property or this building is going into a contract with the insurance company, the insurance company will estimate the risk associated with that building. So in this case, this is 7 cents per square meter, and we have built this in order to gain some initial revenue. And recurring revenue is on a monthly basis, where we will have a SaaS fee per month, also value-based square meter per month, and this is 2.5 cents per square meter. So this fee includes the The prevention, risk prevention mechanism and solution we have on our platform, also the resident alarm reminder if a storm is approaching. Let's look at one building type in particular and how much revenue we will make. So a multifamily building, for example, has 1,500 square meters, and this times 7 cents will be 105 euros per one time to assess the risk of that building when they want to insure it. So the insurance manager types in the address, looks up how much square meters this is, and for 105 euros we tell them how risky this property is located. And then when he decides to insure it, there will be a monthly fee of 2.5 cents, where we will on a continuous basis assess the risk of that building and also alert tenants when there is a storm approaching. So this is the average contract value, which is the estimation we had how much a company receives for an insurance contract per year, and we wanted to be below 10% all the time with our service fee, because we said that's the maximal time money constraint and price sensitivity they have. Let's look into the 5-year financial revenue forecast. So we start in the first year after the launch of the dashboard with a 0.5% market share. And if we have 0.5% market share, this will be 4,000 single-family buildings, which will result in 210,000 euros revenue per year. And we can already see that with multifamily buildings, we will have approximately at 0.5% market share, 800,000 euros in revenue. We want, and we think this is realistic, to achieve 2.5% market share at the end of year 5, because we will have not so many clients in that market. So closing one big client in the first or second year with only a little portfolio, we can probably increase that revenue until year 5, and we will already be profitable after year 2. Let's look at our strategic objects just very briefly. What have we done in the last quarters? We have obviously not achieved any profit yet, but we have actually assessed the business model and have defined the KPIs. So all the objectives and KPIs we are seeing here will be targeted in the next few quarters. The only KPIs we have achieved is that we have developed a cost plan, and also we have hired the first employees, which are the founders basically. Very importantly, we have also the KPIs for the planet, which is that we want to align with the UN, EU, and other sustainable development goals and KPIs. And we will finalize a planetary KPI dashboard very soon. Let's look on the one of our concluding slides is actually that we are committed to also the planet, and we align with the sustainable development goals. We are intending to create value for the society because we help assess the risk of property that will be attacked from natural disasters, and will help actually save money, will save lives, and will also help transform insurance company in very innovative and technologically driven companies. Finally, let's look on the next challenges. We want to start lobbying in our target country, South Korea, since we are targeting insurance companies but also government agencies. We have to establish lobbying relations at the beginning and have to build strategic relationships here. Also, we want to land our first insurance client. As you have seen on our minute slide, we will build we will start building relationships with them at the beginning. And once we have closed our first client, we want to finish the Series A and also present the case study to a UN and NGO in order to gain credibility. Thank you very much. If you have any more questions, please reach out to us via email or contact us directly through LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your time. And